Second.
Moved and seconded.
Hey, Franklin, we're here at the council. Township council meeting.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We're just about to open
Opposed?
public
Motion is
discussion.
carried. In a moment, we'll be open for public
This is
discussion.
Bill Bowman for the
I'm
Franklin
going to
Report.
do something a little unprecedented. I'm going to read a statement beforehand. Council members have heard both sides and realize the only way to proceed from this point is to start at square one and to form a citizens memorial committee which would have no council members on it. To cancel the project would be unfair to many, and to keep it ongoing without regard to the objections would generate emotions which are the antithesis of peace and nonviolence. So at this point, an exceptional use of public discussion time would be guidance to council on how to structure such a committee. As I thought about what might happen tonight, it occurred to me this could be a pivotal moment in the town's history. We love to brag about our diversity. Well, this is the kind of moment which puts our love for diversity to the test. I'm going to guess some of you are here to argue for the monument to be built no matter what. You want to honor those great people. Others will argue because of the way this is unfolded, there should never be any statues. Council knows, however, we can't serve just one side. We have to serve all. And that's where it comes down to each and every one of you. Why? Because it's easy to pray for goodwill towards others when you are in your house of worship on one of your holy days, standing in front of a festive, decorated symbol of your faith. It's easy to talk about love and harmony when you are sitting with friends breaking a fast. It's easy to think of a better world when you're holding a holy book in your hands. What's hard is to do those things now, right now, when your face is red, with a speech in your hand, and you are so sure you are right you can taste it. But these are the times that test us. These are the times that measure the best of us. Not when we are comfortable and content, but when we are angry. People often wonder how I, the Democratic mayor, and Bob LaCourte, the Republican chair, can be best friends. The answer is simply, while we may have different views on how to proceed, we accept without question the other has the welfare of the town and this nation at heart. Council is asking you to accept that of each other. Let this be a ceasefire, a time to hear each other, where we can accept each other's views and then find a reasonable compromise for a solution of some kind. With your public comments, help us find that. And remember, each of you, especially those of you who come up first, have a great responsibility. It takes a single shot to unravel a ceasefire. So anyone wishing to speak, please come to the mic, state your name and address, and I'm actually going to, again, go out of precedence. I'm going to call Mr. Karazi to speak first. And I'm going to call Mr. LaCourte to speak second. And then it'll be first come, first served. The mic.
Pastor George Fontaneri from
Hang on, the mic isn't on. We want to record it.
Alex Karazi, 14 Market Drive, Somerset.
Pastor George Montaneri, 11 South Middlebush Road, Somerset.
Mr. Mayor, good evening. Because of the unfortunate events of the past couple of months, we are seeing division among the community members and distraction in the normal activities of the council. It is time to heal the wounds and bring our community back together. After talking to several people and faith leaders, Pastor George, Rabbi Garfinkel, and I have 3 requests. One from the council, one from the Councilman Prasad, and one from our fellow community members, which we hope they will be honored. Rabbi Garfinkel couldn't join us because he had other commitments. The first is for this council to work as a good team. Therefore, starting tonight, please strive to build trust among yourselves. Be selfless. That is, keep the organization goal above your personal agenda. And communicate well among yourselves to minimize misunderstanding and enable council members to stay as intimate allies. The second request is for Councilman Prasad. Councilman, the money you raised and the hours you spent are good things you have done, and we thank you for your efforts. However, the division in the community, distraction and the hurt caused by your approach and words overwhelm the benefits. Your enthusiasm and narrow focus to get the construction of the park to start by a certain date made you forget your oath of office, stand up for the other pledge, and proper protocol to allow the citizen to comment on the project you championed. Therefore, we are asking you, Councilman, please refrain from any further involvement in this project. Let the rest of the council and the public decide where we go from here. Let the public come up with a fair and democratic way to handle this, and once again show that at difficult times our community will come together like never before, and that this council deserves the public trust and support. The third request is from our fellow community members. Please let us bring our community back together. People make mistakes, some small, some big. Those with bigger hearts forgive others. Let us have bigger hearts and forgive and solve this problem patiently, intelligently, democratically, and with open mind. Mother Teresa once said, "If you have no peace, it is because we have forgotten that we belong to each other." Let us not forget that we belong to each other. Now is the time to work together to build a united community with peace and harmony, and show that we truly mean when we say we are one nation under God, indivisible, liberty, and justice for all. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Excuse me for my voice. Bob LaCourte, 265 South Middlebush Road. So my speech is not going to be very long. With the issue of Mr. Prashad continuing to represent the citizens of Franklin and Memorial Park, it's important to note that these are two very separate issues being discussed. I believe I made myself clear at the last council meeting on how I feel about Mr. Prashad. While I am not a proponent of the park, I understand that some may feel the park is a worthy undertaking. To that end, the only way this council should proceed is to start from square one with the formation of a new citizens group, totally unfettered from its decisions of the past. Mayor Kramer had responded to the Franklin Reporter and Advocate op-ed on starting from square one and recommending me to be part of that. I'd be willing to serve on this committee and start healing the wounds, if the wounds can be healed. I just want to say thank you, and let's see what happens.
Thank you, Mr. McCart. Mr. Guy, thank you for yielding to the other two.
Yeah, Benjamin Guy, 35 Pack Drive. So, like I said before, I tried to warn you guys that this was coming. One of the things that was we talked about before, and I brought this up last year, is that there was an undertone of as far as how people felt about certain things, and because of you guys not addressing certain things and letting it bubble and letting it simmer, you're actually getting escalation of what this looks like. Starting the school years, and then it sort of trickle over into the community at all. So now, what you're dealing with is unrest in the community, which we've been dealing with for a long time frame, and you guys trying to heal it and trying to actually advocate to try to get this done. I'll say this, me personally, for my opinion, is that Prasad is just being a sacrificial lamb out of this whole situation. Because this has something to do with a bigger undertone that's actually going on with the council itself and how you guys actually work together. As much as you guys preach about trying to be one voice, one sound, we're still divided real deeply on a lot of issues. We can't get a lot of things done, and it needs to stop. It really needs to stop. Because the simple fact is, the reason why you don't see young people come here unless you're giving them proclamations is because they understand that you guys are divided. They don't want to hear adults fighting all the time about this and that. All these signs that's here makes no sense. All this confusion because there's no public forums to actually discuss anything with you guys. Because it seems like you're isolated from issues. And we need to stop this. I don't know what you guys are doing, how you guys resolve these things, but you guys need to work on a better route with communicating to the public, because this is what you're going to get every time you have a disagreement about really what we're talking about is a park. If you really talk about it in essence, we're talking about a park. If we go to any other community, you're not going to be arguing about a park. You're not. It doesn't make any sense what we're doing right now. And like I said, I don't know what you guys are doing. I would put it to the kids that actually solve the problem. Because again, it don't look like adults can handle their own issues, anymore. And like I said, these parks are for the community foundation and what's going on. Regardless of statues or anything else, that's just something that adds to the enhancement of it. But we're talking about a simple park, which doesn't make any sense at this specific time frame. Just like I come here and I talk about the youth center that's actually there. That's been on the books for 15 years. Miss Francois and everybody else is just getting to the point of cracking the whip with that. We don't get things done because it's something like this. You guys don't work well together. And I don't know what you do to need to solve it, but I think you guys don't need to be involved with any committees. I think you should push it to either the Board of Ed or somebody else to solve the issue, because it doesn't look like you guys can solve these issues anymore. Me personally. And like I said, that's the statement I want to do. Like Mr. Prasad, like I said, I'm sorry that you're going through this, because again, you are the sacrificial lamb out of what has been festering in this community for about at least 25 years. It has nothing to do with you. And me personally, like I said, it needs to stop. Everybody that's with the signs and everybody else, you guys all need to sit down and talk and just have a public forum hosted by somebody else that has a sound mind and sound body. Whether or not it's Mr. Healy or somebody else that's a part of that's outside of this, because it doesn't need to be the town council. It needs to be somebody else. Thank you.
Leah Convery, 43 Townsend Court, Franklin Park. I'm an architectural hardware consultant. I work with local architects to do security upgrades at the schools in town. And my issue here is I think the money for the park is being misspent when I'm currently working on the security vestibule at the high school and the middle school, which was my high school. I was born and raised in this town. My grandparents moved to this town in the 40s. I just worked on the Elizabeth Avenue School addition, and we had implemented a security vestibule there too. And the budgetary restraints we had to go through during design and construction were amazing. And $100,000 is being spent on an open space that's just going to continue to cost the town money. My personal opinion, I have no opinion on the statues, on who goes there. I really don't care. I care about the safety and security of the school system. And right now, security is not being addressed properly because there's not enough funding. I've been trying to talk to you guys about a lockdown solution, but I don't have children, so I felt it was a little off if I brought it up at a town council meeting. But working with my architects right in town, they're having a lot of trouble trying to get funding and approvals for important school security measures. So that's all.
Rosalind Sherman, 529 Rose Cliff Court. I could not be more diametrically opposite, in my opinion, as what was said by Mr. Guy. He may not understand the issues. From my personal perspective, having been on this council for so many years, you have 9 individuals. If everyone just all agreed and everything was rosy, you would have nothing at all. It's okay to have differences of opinion, and we do, and we did, and you do, and you continue to have different opinions, and that's healthy. It's a lot healthier than just rolling over and playing dead and everybody having to agree to the same thing. I know this council. I understand a lot of the personalities. Some are easier to work with than others, but in the long run, I have great faith that the right thing will be done. The important thing is that the procedure be followed. Bringing people here to influence the council. Of course, everyone's entitled to their opinion, but you have to have faith, and I have that faith because I've been there, guys. And I've been with you, and I understand that you can make a good decision, and you'll make it because you have the facts. You understand what the community wants, what the community needs, and what the community can afford. So there are such misunderstandings. The young lady before me, with great respect to her issues, 62 to 64% of the budget of this township goes to the schools. It is a huge chunk of money. We do still have to pave roads, and we still do have other infrastructure things to do, but there is a wall between the schools and the township. We collect the money, we give them the money, and it is their decision as to how to spend the money. So it is not the council. We can't influence them. In fact, we're not allowed to influence them. So that's typical of the misunderstandings that people have as far as your role is concerned. Bottom line is, I have faith in you. I know you. You'll do the right thing. You don't need to have a packed audience to influence you. Last thing, I would suggest in your consideration of the committee that you ask if Barbara Lawrence, who spoke at the last meeting, would be interested in being on the committee. She is the chair of the committee for the grounds for sculpture. She certainly understands these kinds of things, and I highly recommend you consider her for your committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman.
My name is Carol Peterson, and I live at 12 Lake Avenue in Somerset. I could not attend the last meeting, but I wanted to follow up with number 1, where people can find information on marijuana and children, illness, and deaths. Go on the internet. It's becoming a major, major problem, to the point that Colorado has now recalled gummy bears, and Washington State is on the verge of doing the same. So, to the council members, all of you, Mayor Kramer, Mr. Vornlacher, and especially Mr. Rayon, if you're the one writing the ordinances, please check on the net with what's going on, and if you are smart, you will avoid a lot of problems by not allowing edibles to be made at all in Franklin Township. So I wanted to get that out there because people were questioning what I was saying at the last meeting. Secondly, I've done a lot of talking with a lot of my African American friends. Those I work with from Franklin Township who are at St. Peter's, those who I know from church, and other groups. And they have the following questions for you and this monument movement. Number 1, Dr. Martin Luther King was a great man. He deserves more justice than being set in a cornfield. They recommend, like I do, that his monument be placed in the municipal building or in the library with information so children don't forget that he's more than I have a dream. As for Sister Teresa and knowing Catholic people, did you check with the Catholic Church to see if you have permission to use her as an idol? Because her service was to the poor and the sick, and I'm sure that she would have wanted the money to go to the poor and the sick. Number 3, the monument should go on private property, because there's always going to be the question, and I've seen huge bus tours going in to see the Buddha, who's located on private property where they're going to build a temple. So, who's going to profit from paid bus tours to this site? And then the other question is, how are most of the school children going to get down there when most of the school children with 8 schools live in this immediate area? So for their sake, place Dr. Martin Luther King at least hear, and then come to a conclusion with the committee what you're going to do with the rest of the people. Because I think that it's going to be vandalized. It's out in a no man's land. It's on a very busy highway where you're going to have trouble keeping up with what's going on with it. And it's going to end up as a taxpayer's expense. So number one, don't make edible weed products in Franklin. And with that also, the odor extends when it's growing and it's reaching maturity and it's being processed up to 1,500 yards. So that building better have good ventilating and systems on it. And number two, look at who belongs where. This is the United States of America. We are a united people. My family's been here since 1781. They worked for the Underground Railroad. So where I come from, when you point one finger towards somebody, you're pointing at least three in your thumb back at yourself. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Arnold Schmidt, 134 Hickory Road, Somerset. Become very clear during recent discussions here and at last week's Open Space Advisory Committee meeting that statues or busts on preserved open space property is a non-starter. The committee overwhelmingly that was not the purpose of the 1998 ordinance as reaffirmed by last week's committee vote. If you, our Township Council, decide memorial figures on Franklin Township property are appropriate, the question of who should be represented and where these figures should be placed should not be decided by a few self-appointed individuals, and definitely not by people who are non-Franklin residents. If memorial figures are installed on township-owned property, who pays for them should have absolutely no bearing on who is honored. The currently proposed figures are supposed to promote peace and nonviolence, but because of the way this whole process developed, it has caused division, anger, and distrust. So now we are a community divided, and it's time to reunite. We need to revert to our democratic principles and restart the process. First, decide whether we want statues or busts, and then if we do want them, Franklin residents should decide who should be honored and where they should be placed. A funding campaign could then be initiated if necessary. Councilman Prasad, since the plan was conceived by you, hopefully you will agree that if council decides memorial figures are appropriate, then we will need to initiate a new plan on how to achieve your objective. But also accept that the outcome may be somewhat different than your original plan that unfortunately went awry in its execution. We need a transparent plan that is acceptable to the people of Franklin Township, and tonight I hope to hear from you that you are willing to work towards that end. Thank you.
Sidney Lentz, 22 Cornelius Way. I'm not against the park. Absolutely not. I'd love to take my children to a park where we could see the statues and talk about it. I love this town. I love everybody in the town. What I'm against is when a councilman can say Republicans do not want any colored statues in town. That's what I'm against. I'm against council members not standing up and saying what they should be saying about this council member. And saying, I'm going to take it all in and I'll let you know how I feel later. And nobody's stepping up. Mayor, you said this, you have to represent everyone in the town. You're not doing that. Councilman Prasad, will you resign? No. And none of you council members are going to say anything, except for Mr. Chase, about what should be happening. It's happened before. It's not the first time. We've had these issues before. The divisiveness in this town is from Councilman Prasad. You're not doing anything. You're sweeping it under the rug. Somebody's got to step up and ask for his resignation. Thank you.
Bill Kramer and members of the council, my name is Richard Barber. I've been a resident of this town.
Address, please. Name and address.
I'm sorry?
Your name and your address.
Oh, I'm sorry. Richard Barber, 11 Cedars Run Road, Somerset, New Jersey. I relocated to this community 40 years ago at the request of Dr. Benjamin Hooks, president of the National NAACP, and asked that I become his deputy in New York. But one thing was for sure, as I started looking for houses, that I did not want to live in New York. As a farm boy from North Carolina, I chose this community. I've been in this community for 40 plus years now. It's a great community. And Mr. Mayor, I'm glad to hear you say in your opening statement, diversity. I've had the pleasure of working with Councilman Prasad for the last 10 years on this project. And it's a great project. There've been some setbacks, there've been some misunderstandings, but I'd like to become a part of that citizen group. And I'm here tonight to bring my six decades of economic, human rights, civil rights, corporate, and military experience to this project. I think it would be a great feather in the cap of this community to complete that project with the persons on it whose lives represent the best of human nature. I saw the principal of Canaan Road School sitting back there. And several years ago, after speaking to that school for 7 consecutive years, they invited me over to speak, and lo and behold, they inducted me into their Hall of Fame. And every now and then when I get depressed or downhearted with some of the problems that we're facing in a divided nation and sometimes a divided community, I read the letters of those young people who wrote with a hunger for history of all our ethnic groups in this community. And I think that statue could be a way of bringing us together, not only as a community, but as Americans. Thank you very much.
Stand by my side.
Certainly. Mr. Desai, 1 Lindsay Court.
I am Chandrakant Desai, a resident of 1 Lindsay Court, Franklin Park. And just to give a very brief introduction, I am the chairman of the Indo-American Literary Academy, and I have been elected as the Somerset Democratic County Committee member for almost 20 years. And I was, as a poet, I was invited to read my patriotic poem in Capitol Hill Congress, newly elected Congress in 2003. That is just a brief introduction. I am glad that I could see on the agenda that Council is going to discuss about the Peace and Non-Violence Memorial. And if there would be any committee, if you are deciding any formation of a committee to get into the details of it, then I am volunteering myself to be a member of that committee. As far as the issue of memorial is concerned, I have in my hand close to 500 signatures of those who are supporting this particular memorial, Peace and Non-Violence Memorial, which I will present it to the Honorable Mayor and our Council. Now, just in brief, I will tell that I have 7 grandchildren. I have 2 great-grandchildren too. I want them to go to the school and come safe. And in the same way, I want all the children of the United States as well as Franklin Town to come safe from the school. So we have already read that in schools also there were shootings going on. Also, I want the people walking on the streets and people walking, jogging on the roads, on the streets and walkways. They should be safe. I want our presidents to be safe. 3 have been already assassinated, what we see on the wall. And thousands, hundreds and thousands of people got together in Washington, D.C. to change the law, to change gun control law. Neither President nor Congress has done anything in that direction. And can law help us? If law cannot help us, then we have only one way. We should change the mindset of the people. Thinking, how do we think about the life? How do we think about my neighbors? How do we think about all those things? That we have to change the mindset of the people. And if we have to change the mindset of the people, then only such great world citizens, like the 4 whose monuments are going to be there, is the Peace and Non-Violence Memorial, so we have to get inspiration, and we have to get the message from them. And the people have to be gradually changed in their mind, so that we are safe in our own country. So that is the thing to be done, and that this Peace and Non-Violence Memorial is going to do it. And I would wish that Franklin Township becomes the pioneer in that one, so that we have in each and every town of this United States, we have the Peace and Non-Violence Memorial, and that way we can change the whole country. Now, today is Tuesday. Next Tuesday is a very great day. United Nations is going to celebrate on next Tuesday, it is October 2nd. Peace and Non-Violence Day. International Peace and Non-Violence Day will be celebrated by United Nations all over the world. It is the birthday of Mahatma Gandhi. So, what more I can say in this particular, it is so obvious that we, the wise people over here and there, we don't have to be explained that this is the important thing to be done. It is self-explanatory, and I would request my honorable colleagues sitting over here as well as over here, and please see that this particular monument comes as early as possible. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Claude Cheney, 41 North Lawrence Avenue, Somerset, New Jersey. I've been a resident of Somerset for 33 years. I am appalled by the direction, the leadership of this country, where they're taking us. They are dividing us. And the first thing I would like to do is to applaud Councilman Persuade for coming up with this idea. This is needed now more than ever. I believe that the 4 monuments should be together, especially Mohandas K. Gandhi and Martin Luther King Jr., because Dr. King's, many of his ideas came from Mahatma Gandhi. In 2018, the leader of this country demonizes Mexican Americans as murderers and thieves, when actually the crime rate occurred by the crime rate of Mexican Americans is actually lower collectively than Native Americans. When I say Native Americans, I mean people of the United States. 30 of the 50 states have enacted laws that limit minority participation in the voting process. Thurgood Marshall and Helen Keller, both outstanding historical figures, have been taken from the curriculum of many southern states. We are divided. We should be together. Those four people and those monuments of different ethnicities, that monument should be in a public place where everyone can see it. Because you know what it shows? It shows a unity. All of us working together. Howard Zinn's monumental book of People's History of the United States is now banned in the state of Arkansas. This is terrible. The number one state in hate groups in the United States is none other than our very own New Jersey. If there is a will, there is a way. And I believe that if we can support Councilman Pasquat, Mr. Barber, and all others, we can make this happen. If there is will. If there is a will. Thank you.
Ardaman Singh, 30 Cartier Drive, Franklin Park. I spoke with my heart last time when I was here, and I decided to pen it down so I can really touch everything that has happened in the last month. If you have all seen social media posts and everything. So let me start with this question. Doesn't your conscience tell you to speak the truth? For me, yes, and always. Franklin Township has a lot to be proud of. Our diversity in every aspect, our houses of worship, our schools, our residents. I am very proud to be a 20-year resident and to have my children go through our public schools. I'm a first-generation Indian American, extremely active in my community, and yes, I always vote. I would request Councilman Prasad to reach out to his invaluable anonymous donors who have funded his statues for him and have promised to maintain the land where they will be placed. I believe these donors are very fortunate and affluent people, and they should donate towards our food bank, our schools, and our community. Instead of these statues, assume responsibility for a township road and pledge to keep it clean, free of potholes. Help those in need by providing school supplies, breakfast, clothes, and even shoes to some of our student families who are struggling. Support our local nonprofits that support our residents by paying their rent, utility bills, and other needs so they may continue their good work. Provide housing for our homeless and transient residents. Why is there so much need and poverty in Franklin Township if we have such affluent supporters who want to help our community? Mr. Prasad, can you bring them and bring this fortune into our town? I think you bring a lot of fortune to the party, to the political partners that are not saying anything because they're worried they might lose the funding that you provide for the party. I would implore you and your extremely generous friends to donate generously to our schools. Your park includes an educational component. You are being redundant. Our children would learn best in their classrooms, not in a park that they cannot access because it is not a convenient part of town. Or how about having your friends donate a bus to the township? Isn't it better for everyone in Franklin to have transportation, to get to a job, to continue their education, and even get to our library? Who knows, Mr. Prasad, maybe our Township Council will name a road after you if you get some money into managing real needs of Franklin Township. I am still debating with myself on how these statues will help our town. Why are we wasting our time and energy on this? Is there something else happening in the background that we, the township residents, are unaware of? Aren't there more important and challenging things we should, as a community, focus on getting accomplished? Why is there so much time being spent on this park and these statues that bring no value to our town? Instead of bringing people together as people, the statues represent, you are tearing this town apart. I'm sorry, and I'm really ashamed.
Devendra Singh, 6th Street Up Circle, Princeton Township. Two things I want to talk about. First, about the compressor station 206. First, I want to thank the mayor and the council for their unrelenting support. And I want to thank you all, along with the residents who have been supporting the effort, and hopefully all of you will continue to provide that support. I want to call out our Franklin task force for their efforts. With all the focus and the energy and the attention and the efforts, the water permits have been resubmitted, and they've been pushed out by almost a year. And the final environmental impact statement has been pushed out from early October to January of next year. And we all know the dates being pushed out, they all mean a lot, not for us, but to the NEAS project as well as Williams and Transco. So thank you for all the efforts, and I appreciate you guys continue to providing all those efforts to the program and the protest, and to the residents who continue to provide those efforts as well. So thank you. So that was topic one. Before I say anything on the other topic I would like to talk about, I'd like to say I have no political affiliation, unlike a lot of people who have talked up until so far. I have no dog in this fight. And when I come to these council meetings, generally, I'm a listener. I do not speak, unless it's about the compressor, which I'm really passionate about. But this time, I'm compelled to. You know why? Because we made this into a big, big issue. Peace memorials, in general, should be welcome. I have not heard a lot of people today and in the past talk about no one who has said that we should circumvent the process, that we should disregard safety, that we should disregard security, that we should disregard taxpayers' money, that we should violate intellectual property. So why the ruckus? If there are open issues, there are enough smart people in the room and outside this room within the township who could work through those issues. And we have enough smart people who have been able to work through more complex issues that we have on the table, and we have been able to seamlessly work through those issues. Is this about issues, or is this about people? Is this about issues, or is this about an individual? And I don't need you to answer this. Just introspect and give that answer to yourselves. Likewise, my advice on the other side, if there is significant opposition, and if this gets in the way of becoming a divisive issue in our township, I would appeal to our council to look at alternatives so that our majority can rally behind that alternative. And if no conclusion can be reached, we drop this altogether. The sentiment and action in the word peace should not and cannot be compromised. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Naresh Sharma. I'm a physician residing at 3 Branner Court in Somerset, Ward 2. I would like everyone in this room to know that I am the donor and have donated significant amount, more than 85% of total donation for this project. I am not politically affiliated to anyone. I'm neither a friend nor an enemy of Rajiv Prasad. I'm not a friend or any one of you or any other office-bearing individual in this township. I have no hidden agendas, I have no hidden motives. I was here at the last meeting when you guys voted for the monument, I understand 9-0. That means everybody was supporting it. Based on that trust and faith, I gave that donation. I'm somewhat perturbed and disturbed by the developments since that event from both sides. And I now hear that there is a proposal to go back onto the drawing board to the stage one. I consider it is not a progressive, but I think it is a regressive step. This is my own individual opinion. I have therefore made a decision to formally seek a refund of my donation from the Township Foundation. Because I no longer believe that even if you take it back to the drawing board and do whatever you have to do, and wherever else you do this project, it will not be true to the spirit of the project that I gave the donation a week or 2 weeks ago.
Thank you, sir.
So I just wish everyone to know that, and I wish all of you good luck. Thank you.
I'm Christina Zambri. I reside at 3 Buffer Drive in Somerset. I too have been a lifelong resident of Franklin. My parents moved here in 1970. I don't believe that this entire subject is about statues as much as people want to throw race cards around, which I believe is another huge problem. I believe that it is the lack of procedure that was followed, the lack of transparency in what was going on, the fact that this project and the donation and everything was in the works long before the township residents were ever aware of it. That is the issue. It's not an issue of statues or the statues of whoever you want to choose to put there. I think you've lost the public's trust in how this whole entire thing was handled, and the fact that the entire council, with the exception of one township council member, sat there and let this behavior go on, I find to be appalling. I find the divisiveness in some of Councilman Prasad's statements to also be appalling. I am personally offended, and many of my friends who are from numerous backgrounds are offended by the fact that we've been called racists. This goes back 2 to 3 years when during the Catalpa Park issue, where the FBI was called, and we were called a hate group for disagreeing with Councilman Prasad. Is that what this town has come to, where if you have your own opinion or you disagree with basically law breaking, in effect, with how this whole project came about, you're automatically a racist? I love this town because of the diversity that's in it. I chose to make this town my home and raise my daughter here because of the diversity. I loved that in school, no matter what I was into, no matter what talents I had or interests I had, there was a group for me. And maybe if the process had been followed correctly from the beginning, this wouldn't even be an issue now. But people who keep saying it's about who the statues are of, no. The issue that residents have, and this is Democrat and Republican, this is bipartisan. People have issue with the lack of transparency that went on, and then the name calling. You want to talk about a town divided? Start throwing the race card around. This isn't the federal government. This isn't any other state. This is the state of New Jersey and the township of Franklin. It doesn't matter what goes on outside of here. We need to conduct ourselves accordingly so that we remain united. So the issue is not the monument park or the statues, it's how the entire process was handled. Now we want to start over from scratch. How can you gain the trust back of the people that this is going to be handled properly, with no hidden agendas, no side agendas going on, and that it's not going to become somebody's pet project? And I would love to know what the deputy mayor's opinion is on all of this. Because we've heard from some of the councilmen, we've heard from the mayor, and a bunch of us are curious as to your thoughts on this entire ordeal.
I made my comment at the last meeting, and I also gave a statement to the paper.
Well, if this had been on the agenda during the last meeting, maybe I would have been here. And I'd also have a question directly for Councilman Prasad. Why do you always resort to race when people disagree with you? Why does it have to be about race? That's what's further dividing this town. When you throw the race card out. Didn't think I would get an answer for that one. So, again, I would love for the township to be united. And I also agree with some of the other speakers who said that there are other needs in this town that come before a pet project like this, especially one that was conducted behind the backs of the township residents. This town is not perfect, but it's a town I love and I love to call home. And I'm more than happy to volunteer my own time too, to be on any committees when it comes to improving the township and when it comes to benefiting especially the children of the township. So, thanks.
Thank you.
Ms. Danbury, since you weren't at the last meeting and I wasn't aware of that, my comment was start from ground zero. And I don't know if you heard the mayor's statement in the beginning.
Yes, I did.
Okay, so that's my thought.
Darrell Jenkins, 383 Hillcrest Avenue. I'm pretty new to what has been going on lately. I've been traveling a lot, but my family's been here for 50 years. Even if I haven't been, I've ventured in and out over that time. But I'm still concerned about my community. I'm still concerned about my township because this is the town that I grew up in. And the thing that I've been sitting here listening to everyone because I figured this is how I'm going to be educated. And so far, I hear those that totally want to scrap the project. Those voices are in the minority. It seems like people do want to see this happen in some fashion. And while I do respect those who have over the past 20 years or so, those who have been pushing to maintain the open spaces in this community, in this township, I feel that this time is being used as a weapon. And I will tell you flat out, if I don't know, I don't know too much about what has been going on over the past few months, but I will tell you, I deal with racism around the country on a regular, and my takeaway from my experiences has been if the race card is being played, the game isn't solitaire. So I think we all need to just check and see exactly where is that coming from. Now, I do support this project. The biggest concern that I have, and the reason why I'm here, is because, and I might have misunderstood this, but there was something last week in which a board suggested that there will be no statues on open space or on public property. I didn't know whether or not this was an ordinance or what have you being considered, but if it is, I will tell you right now that in about 20 to 40 years, should such an ordinance be passed in this time, about 20, 40 years, there's going to be a generation that wants to recall that ordinance because there is going to be a need for statues or what have you, some sort of monument to something that they feel strongly about. And Councilman Prasad's not going to be the bad guy. Councilman Prasad's not going to be seen as the bad guy. That's the prologue. So I think we need to come to terms with what it is we want to do in this community. And I have the faith that we will come to a positive solution. But simply put, we just got to keep our heads. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bill Connell, 25 Spring Street. So, the first thing, racism seems to be coming up. And the thing about this whole statue discussion, I strongly believe that nobody does it better than Franklin without statues. Franklin does not need to be lectured about how to do things. I'm involved in the community for many years, and no, it's not perfect, not even close. Okay, but I still think Franklin is the hallmark of what you should do as a community. And every day we strive to be better. So when I speak that I'm not sure about statues, it's because I believe we already do the things but on a day-to-day basis, we just grind it out and we do a good job doing it. So anyway, Arnie Schmidt was up here speaking. I support everything he said. I was one of the open space members that voted for the statues. At this moment in time, with the information we had and looking at what's going on inside the community, outside in the world, it was vocal about this whole issue. And all I can say is, to Mr. Guy, it's much better than even I have led you to believe. On a day-to-day basis, I love the fight. Okay, I send council comments all the time and they don't react. It's very disappointing. Okay, I want to fight with them. I want to exchange ideas. Okay, they get a little upset by it. They want things nice and smooth. But the fight is a good thing. But it is obvious that when a council person goes rogue, there's no mechanism to stop him. Okay, he could do whatever he wants. Short of killing somebody, there was nobody stopping him saying, wait a second, we need to step back. And that was the voice I was trying to use. Okay, this council does a very good job on a lot of things. There's a lot of work done. One of my first speeches, I said it's been a very prolific council, but you have a problem and you're not fixing it. Okay, that's all I'm going to say about that. Actually, that's all I'm going to say. Thank you. Oh, Mayor, I support your motion, whatever you want to call it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Beverly Lawson, 2004 Amwell Road. I guess what I want to address is a statement of, well, first of all, I'm a resident of this township, I'm black, I'm a Republican as well as Dr. King. So I really had issues with the statement that's posted in the back, where basically you're like, the Republicans don't want statues of color. Well, I'm colored. I don't have a problem with the statues. So I just want to put that on record. Okay? Secondly, I don't oppose the statues. I basically oppose the lack of transparency that you guys, well, basically you took in doing it a backdoor kind of way just to get it done. If you follow the procedures, I don't think all these people would be sitting here and you would have such a big issue about it. So again, it's not about the statues, as a couple other people have mentioned. It's not Democrat, it's not Republican. I don't think that has an issue with it at all. It's just the transparency of it all. Again, as I've said before, you've all been voted in here. We trust you all to look out for the best interests of most of the people in Franklin, if not all of the people in Franklin. Cutting off at least 40% of the people who are here because they're not Democrat as you are was a little disturbing, to say the least. We're still all residents of Franklin. We're all supposed to be one big family. Franklin was diverse before this. It will be diverse after these statues are made. That's not the biggest issue here. Is not whether the statue should be made. It's about how you went about it. All right, my other question is, have you written a letter to clarify, admitting to the MLK family that you basically lied about why these statues were going to be built? Because your original statement was, can I see that please? Republicans who do not want any statues of color. That's what you told them. I want to know, was a letter ever written taking that back saying, hey, I misspoke and it really wasn't what was said? That's my question.
Good evening, Jim Wickman, 12 Darwin Road, Somerset, New Jersey. In fairness to everybody in the room, I am also a publicly elected official in Franklin Township as a fire commissioner, and I am charged with managing millions of dollars of taxpayers' dollars. And I also want to say that we are all people of color. We may be different colors, but we are all people of color in this room. And Franklin Township is filled with people of many different colors. I'm a 54-year resident of Franklin Township, born and raised in this town. I decided many years ago to stay in this town. I raised my children in this town. Myself and my children went to this school system in this town, and we made that decision. We wanted to stay in Franklin Township. And what I'm going to end with is several quotes. We have pictures of notable American leaders I'll start with Abraham Lincoln. Let the people know the facts and the country will be safe. I'll move on to John Fitzgerald Kennedy. The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. President Barack Obama, those of us who manage the public dollars will be held to account, and to spend wisely, reform bad habits, and to do our business in the light of day. And finally, in reference to many conversations this evening, and I think we're all missing the point, this is not about peace statues, this is not about public space, this is about how this came about. And it's disturbing. And it's disturbing. As a public official, I am held to the light of day, and I would expect that from the people that I vote for. And I did vote for every one of you on this board, just so you know that. And I expect it. That's the least, that's all I expect, is that you are held accountable and we trust you. And I'll end with Martin Luther King Jr.'s quote. I look to a day when people would not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. Thank you.
Naomi Nierenberg, 24 Beverly Avenue. Resident. I've been
Get a li-
over 60 years.
Get a little closer to the mic. Thank you.
I'm over 60 years in this town. My children went to these schools. My grandchildren went to these schools. If you remember world history, there was a gentleman, Machiavelli. The end justifies the means. Doesn't matter how we get there, who we trash along the way, what the citizens want, procedures, township ordinance, etc. Because Mr. Prasad wanted this park, he has defied the very thesis of this effort, peace and reconciliation, by ripping the township apart. And if it weren't for the Franklin Reporter, I wonder how many other people would know about this. Unfortunately, we don't have the daily print, which people used to read and would come to meetings, and it's very difficult to find out what goes on in a township as large as ours and as diverse as ours. So I thank them for exposing this, and I hope that you can find a way, if it is beneficial to the township. However, if it's not, if you come to that conclusion, then can it, and I'm sorry that gentlemen will have his statues, but we have to keep the township together, not the statues. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Ajita Singh, a resident of 6th Street Top Circle in Franklin. I've lived in this community for the past 17 years. I'm born and raised here, went to the elementary schools here, the middle school, Sampson, high school. Franklin is a very diverse town, and I don't think that a peace memorial should have this much debate over it in this township, quite frankly. You can see from the diversity just in this room that, you know, everyone here should be standing for these statues. I don't think it should be a partisan debate. I don't think you should be throwing one person under the bus. I understand that if there's a lack of transparency, of course, you should adhere to the rules, you should adhere to the code. I haven't read much about this issue. This is the first meeting I've come to in my life. I think it's definitely important for you to get the younger generation involved, council people. I'm the only 22-year-old in this room. It's a shame. I think that the idea behind the statues wasn't a negative idea. I think that it was meant to bring the community together. We should have good open spaces where everyone can hang out. There's so many good parks in this township. We have Inman Park, right, where I used to have tennis lessons every Saturday morning. Like, we have Colonial Park, where I go on weekly runs. There are so many beautiful places. I don't think that this park would inhibit or prevent anything from taking place in this township. I do think that proper protocol should be followed, but there should not be this much debate over it if all council people have already agreed that this statue should have been built. And I don't think that there's any issue of race in this township. I've gone through all the schools here in the school system. I've never once left the public school system, and I've never encountered any issues throughout my 14 years plus of schooling here. So I think that we should maybe just take a step back and not make this a political issue or a political statement, and just take it as face value for what it is, and it was just supposed to bring the community together. Thank you.
So much to say in so little time. Chip Hoover, 9 Stallion Courts, Hoever. Please make sure you spell it right. Back around 2003, I started coming to these council meetings. I got pretty active because there was some business that we needed to take care of, and it had to do with transparency. And then I went away for a while because everything seemed to be going well and things were transparent and going by the order of law. But now it seems to me I've slipped from that a little bit. The young lady before me was very right. She's the youngest one in the room probably, and it's a shame we don't have more young people getting involved. Maybe the Board of Ed needs to think about a civics class. But as far as race goes, the race came up in a memo from Councilman Prasad where he said that Republicans who do not want any colored statutes in town, that's when the race card started. I am by far not a racist. I serve many communities within Franklin Township, and my communities are of all ethnicities and all races and many, many, many different nationalities. I can't be a racist. I've been marching for freedoms since the 70s and into the 80s. Been there, done that. I don't have a problem with the people and the statutes proposed for this park. I have a problem with the process. There is due process, and from what I'm seeing, it seems that's fallen by the wayside. And we can't talk partisanism if we don't look at the fact that somebody's making robocalls to get people out here to support the park, and not telling us who's paying for those robocalls, where are they coming from. It's just like magic. That's disturbing that somebody's launching a campaign, seemingly a political type campaign, of robocalls to get people out here to pay attention and speak up for the park without anybody having an opportunity to announce against it. Nor is this very publicized the way it probably should be. I'm not well versed enough on this yet, underlined capital letters. I'm going to learn more about this process and what has taken place, and I will be back. Thank you very much. Oh, one last thing. Think about what those 4 people did. They didn't put up monuments. I said this last month. They took action. Mr. Mandela went to prison for his beliefs. Dr. King marched many, many miles for his beliefs and got shot for it. Mother Teresa took care of lepers. And here I go again, forgetting somebody. Gandhi, right. How can I forget him? Mahatma Gandhi, Mr. Peace himself, you know. They're fine people, but they didn't put up statues, and statues don't create peace. Thank you again.
Robert Troutman, 13 Orchid Court, here in Somerset. If my dozen or so years as a trial attorney has taught me anything, it's to read the jury and see when their eyes are starting to glaze over, so I'll be as quick as I can. I want to start by thanking Councilman Chase and Mayor Kramer for being the 2 people that had the intestinal fortitude to say what needed to be said last week towards Mr. Purcell. I'll get more to that in a second, but I want to talk for a second to Councilman Wright. At the end of public session last week, a number of us left. The ones that were here on time, unlike Councilman Wright, sat here for 2 hours, and then we got chastised as if we were children by Mr. Wright because we had to leave and go tend to our families. I think that is completely inappropriate. I think you owe us all an apology, sir. And I think you forget who you work for. We pay you to be here. You don't tell us when we can and can't come to meetings. We tell you that you need to be to meetings on time. Councilman Galtieri and Councilman Vasanella, after you heard everything we had to say last week, your comments were, let us sit back and think about it, and then we'll get back to you on how we feel. That's a complete cop-out. Not one thing that was said by the public last week to you was new information to you. You knew everything that was being brought up, you knew the issue, and you were not prepared to do what was right. I'm pretty sure you hoped it would just be swept under the rug and forgotten about, but it's not. You need to take action. You have a rogue member in your council, and you need to do something about it. As I said last week, this isn't about statues. This isn't about a peace and nonviolence memorial. It's about the process and the public trust. So I don't want to talk much about the actual statues. I understand the item for discussion by the council later, and I'm willing to sit back and see how that goes. But as for the statues that are apparently already here, other than Councilman Prasad, has anybody actually seen them? Have any of you seen them and know they actually look like the people they're supposed to look like? That they're of decent quality? Do we have another situation like the Lucille Ball statue that was pretty famous a couple years ago that looked nothing like her? Because we don't know any of this. Again, it's being kept from us. Now, finally, Ms. Lawson asked you, Mr. Prasad, if you had reached out to Mr. Tidwell and the Martin Luther King estate. Your silence speaks volumes that you haven't, but don't worry, because I did. I took care of that for you, and they're not happy with you.
Skip Schaefer, 2 Laird Terrace, Somerset. I was watching this meeting on television this evening and just happened to tune in before Mr. Barber started speaking, and I just got so upset at some of the things he said that I just wanted to come over and put 2 cents in. When are we going to draw a line between simple, right, and wrong? I'm sure all of you up there have denounced Donald Trump and his followers since he was a campaign candidate for his antics, for his splitting apart the country, and also for all the Republican members in Congress who have not opened their mouths, who have not stood up to Donald Trump and told him how wrong he is just because they're in the same party. When are we going to draw the line between simple, right, and wrong? How hypocritical is it for Mr. Barber to say, oh, it's been a misunderstanding, it's been a setback. Mr. Vasanella last month saying, oh, you know, that's just Rajiv being emotional, you know, a little out of control, blah, blah, blah. When are we going to draw a line against simple right and wrong? The man has proven himself to be a liar on multiple occasions over the last 3 years. He's proven himself to be deceitful. He's proven himself to be a bully, a name caller. Everything that we all hate about the president and his followers and what they're doing to this country. And yet we seem to tolerate it from this gentleman. I don't understand why. Enough is enough. He's incapable of following the rules and procedures that are set up for this council. He's proven that. This is the second time we're here in 3 years because of that. He's nothing but a deceitful, lying bully multiple times over. He has little credibility left in this town. He can't be trusted. He's proven that. And sir, if you think we're going to have trouble getting 11,000 signatures for your recall election, think again. We weren't done this to one council person. And we got more than enough signatures. And she sinned 1/10, 1/100th less than what you have sinned over the last 3 years. So getting those 11,000 signatures is going to be like shooting fish in a barrel. But when are we going to draw a simple line and say enough is enough? If somebody can't operate in the correct manner, don't consider anything he brings to the table. How ironic, peace and nonviolence, and yet this person, with his sneakiness, with his deceitfulness, divides this town. Unbelievable. Let's draw the line here.
Good evening. My name is Jennifer Welch. I live at 3 Joan Road here in town. It sounds like I'm the newbie. I've only lived here for 8 years, but I am trained in history and in social studies education, and I've made a bit of a project recently of researching a lot about public history. There's obviously been a lot of meat for that kind of study in the last few years, as many parts of our country have debated what kinds of public memorials are made in their communities. And I think that we can all agree that what we found is that when every voice in the community is not included in what is represented in their community, that divisions are caused and people feel excluded from that process and from the community as a whole. And by contrast, I've been following what's been happening in Boston, where they are similarly working on creating a monument to peace and justice and to honor Dr. King. And we found that this process has gone on for several years. They've taken several sketches from across the country. They've narrowed it down to, it's either 5 or 6 that are now the finalists. People are voting on this. There is an endowment that is being raised for the support of those statues going forward, and documentation that there'll be efforts to education, not just for children in the community, but for everyone. It seems to me like the model is already present for how we can create monuments for public history that are effective in bringing a community together rather than dividing community further. Thank you.
Good evening, Richard Seaman, 34 Rouchigal. Forgive me if I cover something that's already been covered. I spent the last 2 hours at a Board of Education Facilities Committee meeting. Again, just to start, as I've done the last 2 months, my comments have nothing to do with the validity of having a monument park. I really don't care. Candidly, it's not an issue that's of interest to me. My comments are more about process. And tonight I wanted to just talk. Late this afternoon, I wrote a letter which I sent to the Franklin Reporter, and they very nicely posted it late this afternoon. So it's there if anybody wants to see it, but that's what I want to talk about tonight. As I understand it, the agenda was changed to address some kind of a discussion of ad hoc committee or something of that nature tonight with regard to the park. And I guess my feeling overall is that this is somewhat of a waste of time and money, this idea of a park with 4 statues in it. You know, not to give it any more validity than it deserves, but especially given the fact that it's being looked at for a site that's 100 feet from another town. And basically it's about as far from almost the entire population of town as we can put it. So, I mean, it just, that in itself really bolsters my comment that this is just an invalid process. You know, you're putting it in a place where hardly anyone can walk to it. So, I mean, it really, this is sort of the culmination of the lack of actual thought that went into this, I think is what I'm trying to get to. So, at this point, what I wrote in my letter is, I think the township has an opportunity at this point. I think the mayor, and his letter that he wrote, was a positive thing in trying to identify an ad hoc committee to get back to square one and move forward. And I appreciate that, and I support Mr. Kramer and his effort. But what I think we should do, I think we should look at this a little larger picture. You know, you have a municipal complex now that now has a beautiful gazebo on one corner. And it's got, unfortunately, it's got a little schoolhouse on another corner that got plopped there about, I don't know, 12 years ago, and it's sat there orphaned ever since. And assuming the council acts tonight, and then again next month, there's going to be a land swap, and the council will ultimately take over the historic Middlebush School. And the footprint of this municipal complex is going to get bigger and bigger. And I think that looking at all of these things, the council has an opportunity here. You have an opportunity, instead of creating an ad hoc committee for something that hardly anybody wants, that has been planned in the shadows and still has so many issues, why don't we create an ad hoc committee for how to bring forward the municipal complex to a point where it really encompasses all of these new things and these older things that now have an opportunity for a new purpose. Why don't we find a way to repurpose the Middlebush School, should the council decide to do that, to where it is a usable space for the youth of our township? Why don't we find a way to improve the little schoolhouse and turn it into a landmark and a museum and a place where people can visit and go look at it and have an opportunity to see what a small part of Franklin Township looked like 100 years ago? Why don't we focus on something that actually does something positive for the residents of our township, as opposed to creating a monument to a person, not really before people, but to somebody else? It's a fruitless exercise. So I would suggest to you tonight, don't create an ad hoc committee for a monument park. Or if you want to, create an ad hoc committee for a monument park as well as these other facilities in town that you need to make a decision on of how you want to proceed. You're going to bring 9 or 12 or 15 or 39 people together, give them something to talk about. Because you have these other facilities that could be put to beneficial use for your citizens, for the youth of the township. Do something about it. Don't let, and I'll tell you what, I'm a Board of Ed member. I'm not speaking as a Board of Ed member, but let me say something right now. I hope that the land swap goes through because I think it's good for all parties. However, if you're going to let that building sit there and fester, like you've done with the recreation needs assessment, then don't sign the damn land swap. Because the recreation needs assessment identified a pressing need for this township. And other than Middlebush Park, the rest of it is going to wherever it's going. Middlebush School is a wonderful opportunity for this council, and I hope that you will take this opportunity. If you're going to make an ad hoc committee, make it for something helpful. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Santosh Kebalo, 14 Girard Avenue, Somerset, New Jersey, 08873. I'm sure some of them don't even know what their zip code are here in this place. I'm going to address Prasad first because he waived the resolution at me last week. I didn't have an opportunity to respond to him. He waived the 2007 resolution saying that it was passed, but the township attorney said it's void, 2008. I demand Prasad to resign. Have you seen Franklin Day? Have you all gone to Franklin Day? How great of a day it was. Most of the residents were there. We were all getting together. We were all united. But this peace and nonviolence part has split us apart. As I mentioned last week, this is not a party issue. This is not democratic. This is not a GOP issue. This is not white, black, or brown issue. This is all about the due process. The due process was not followed here. It was underhanded. The bus were already built. And a donor came forward. I would recommend that donor to donate that money to the buses, to the Franklin Food Bank, and other places. Let's build a YMCA with the money that all these people are ready to bring into the township. We are a diverse town. And I commend that 22-year-old lady who wanted to be participant in the politics. You should. Doesn't matter which party you are. This is all about due process, gentlemen. What we are going through in this town is a microcosm of what we are doing in this country. We were named the 5th best city in the United States. We have slipped to 89. We'll slip to 200. People like Prasad who insert race into this community. 3 years back, he inserted race when they were talking about recreational assessments. He wanted to build cricket park. that was his agenda, he brought in race. He called on the FBI and other people. Now this is his agenda of peace and non-violence. He has inserted race and party into this. I'm an independent. I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. I'm appalled that he inserts race into. This is not Indian politics. Follow the money. We should follow the money. We need to know where that money is coming from, how it has been appropriated, who has got the money, what other things have been diverted. What a beautiful day we had on Saturday. Everybody enjoyed from 12 to 5. Kids were happy. Residents were happy. And we come back on Tuesday, and this is the faces we see. Just because Mr. Prasad inserted race into this agenda, I would consider the leadership to hold everybody accountable. You need to have a little bit more code of ethics. I work for financial firms and other places. If you have $25 and more, I have to produce a receipt. I cannot take a client out for a lunch or dinner. Where is the transparency here? You're all public servants. Somebody told us. We pay you. You need to make sure that you are accountable. You're able to tell us what you're going to be doing. I do not know why the agenda changed twice. Again, I beg and plead to the council here, please do not let this part go, because you have lost the trust of the people of Franklin. Let's go to the drawing board. If you want to write their names, I don't think anybody is opposed to the statues of those 4 people. But the process which was not followed is what the problem people in this community have. We built a gazebo. Let's name Martin Luther King, Mahatma Gandhi, Nelson Mandela on the gazebos. As we name the park, MetLife. We can auction it off. Get some money. I urge the leadership to make sure that you are accountable and you demand Mr. Prasad to resign. This is the second time he has inserted race into this community. I'm divorced. I have friends. I do not see. I coach soccer. I have business in Hamilton site. Thank you.
I don't know if I can follow that up. A little while ago I was cooking tuna steaks on my grill. Scott Glasson, 14 Denver Drive, Somerset. Skip Schaefer stole my thunder. I'm truly disappointed in all of you.
Get a little closer to the mic.
Absolutely. I voted for Donald Trump. Anybody else? Yep. I can say it. I can't say I'm proud of it, but I did it. He has done nothing but divide us all. And I call on this council to find their own Donald Trump and look at him and call him out. So far, Mr. Chase is the only one who has done it. I'm disappointed in all of you. Stand up, and speak about what's right. Mayor Kramer, don't look around for a third time to get smacked. You've been beat twice. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Yeah, that's how it goes. You were looking for a reason last week to forgive him. Come on, how many times? You need a break? I think you're a smart guy. We've spoken before. I think that's all I got. I'm going to go back to my tuna steaks.
Yeah, I know. John H. Tibbs, 25 Parkside. By the way, I've been living here 65 years. 65 years I've been living in township. And I've watched many mayors come and go. I've watched many council people come and go. And I've always maintained a Democratic party because I'm a Democrat. Make no mistake about it. I work hard to defeat Republicans. I'm appalled at the mayor, what he's been listening to for the past 2 hours. I don't see how anybody of the same party can allow people to talk with such disdain about a member of his council. I can remember a while back when there was some conversation about the cricketers, people of color, coming to Catawba Park because they needed some space. And the same group that's here came out there, most of them, came out there and they raised the same type of atmosphere that's in this room now about them coming and using that park. Then came Middlebush Park, when they heard that some young black kids of color was coming there to use it, the Pop Warner kids, and all hell broke loose. The same group came out again, protested, with signs. They had everything from loud noise ordinance to whether or not the kids could even come and use the park. The same group of people. Now you have the Monument Park. I don't think anybody at all could conceive the fact that those 4 members are not pillars of this whole country, the whole world, matter of fact. And because somebody said that the Republicans don't want a person of color to come in their neighborhood, and it was printed and taken all out of context, and now you're back again. Well, I think that the 9/11 monument outside the building there, which I think that all you guys would respect, came from the urging or influence of Mr. Fasadi. He was responsible for the big rock from Cap Rock and all of the signatures and all the things designed. It came from Mr. Fasadi. And I think everybody in this room should be proud of it. If you're not, then you got a problem with Fasadi. I think that those statues that's being built is that would really put Franklin Township on the map as a very, very good and united community, especially when you talk about the diversity. And I know that some of you guys in here, you know me, and I know who you are. I know you just as filthy, I don't want to even use the word, as a dog. That's okay with me. I can still get along with you. But I don't like it. I don't like what you're doing.
Mr. Tibbs, address the council, I've warned you.
You didn't tell that other man to turn around not to do that. You didn't tell him how come.
He was reading a sign, and I'll take as much of your time as you'd like to discuss this issue. But your clock is running. Address the council.
Yes, sir. And of course, I knew you would say that, Mr. Mayor. I told the gentleman back that watch him stop me from talking. You know, and you came right on time. These are your people here.
Yes, sir, because you are breaking the rules and no one else has.
Yes,
So
sir.
Please address the council, Mr.
May I
Tibbs.
finish my time? I mean, they had a long time.
Anytime you want to stop arguing with me, you can finish your
Well, you
time.
started it, sir. Yes, and by the way, I hope everybody was listening to. A lot of people were talking about the money, where the money comes, and this money and that kind of money. I'm glad that the gentleman that donated the money was here, so that people don't understand the process, that where the money came from, who donated the money. And this thing has been going on for 10 years, 7 years. I cannot help if a lot of you guys didn't understand. I had flyers. I was passing out flyers, and Pastor Buster Silways, and a lot of people was on the committee to raise the money for the statues. Now everybody, now just because you guys just learned about it the past 2 weeks, and here you guys come, you know.
Mr. Tibbs, address the council.
I'm addressed. Okay, yes, sir. I told everybody here that I think he told me I'm not disrupting anything, sir.
Right at this moment, no, but a couple of minutes ago you were.
Oh, I was. I
Yes,
sound
sir.
my voice. Well, it's okay, sir. You know, there's one thing I like about myself, Mr. Mayor Kramer. I think that God gives me the sense of understanding who people are and where they are, and I'm supposed to do the right thing. And the right thing for me to do right now is make people understand that Mr. Rajiv Prasad is the most honorable and dedicated man to this community, and he tries to find things that would enhance this nobility of this community. And all the things that people are saying are wrong against him, he's not a liar, he's not an unforgiving person, he's a dedicated human being, and it's always loved Franklin Township right now. And I want you to understand that. And I'm appalled that most
time is
people
up,
here.
Mr. Tibbs.
Yeah, I know. You understand what he's doing, right?
Mr. Tibbs.
Okay. Yeah, I know. I'll be here forever. Sir. So will we all. That's right. I'll be with you.
Charles Halloran Jr., 248 Harley Way here in Somerset.
Yes, sir.
First, I would like to applaud the committee for basically going back to square one with the project. I think it's now going to receive the transparency that many of the township people have expressed they wanted to see. So thank you for hearing the citizens of the township. But Mr. Prasad, if this was a corporation, you would have been canned for incompetence, and if not knowing a resolution expires in 2007 and basing your actions going from that time to now on something that was expired, that is incompetence. That's the best scenario. The ugliest scenario is that you didn't care and you just wanted to advance your own agenda, and that's the worst case scenario. In either case, you have to own your actions, own up to what was done, and I think you need to resign. And failing that, I hope the recall process is successful in this evening. Thank you.
Good evening, Randy Jones, 3 Beck Place, Franklin Park, New Jersey. It's been a while since I've been here, so am I able to ask a question to the council or to the mayor?
You certainly can ask.
Okay. As you know, Mr. Mayor, I'm serve on the Open Space Committee, been on the Open Space Committee for 18 years.
You were chairman.
And chairman, yes. In terms of the process for anything on open space and suppose the township manager, wouldn't there still have to be a hearing before anything's done on that property? Is that right? No matter what this council decided, there would have to be a public hearing on a Rossi property.
According to the Green Acres regulations, my interpretation, and I've consulted with the township attorney on this, and he can change my answer if he wishes, but it's not a substantial change to the use of the property, so it wouldn't require a public hearing, such as when the Catalpa property went from farmland to active recreation, with a fully developed park, it requires a public hearing. But in this particular case, if the monument had been built on a small portion of a property that already had some active recreation on it before we bought it, continues to have it now, it was a mixed-use property, I don't believe that it would have required a full public hearing.
I disagree.
Like I said, I consulted with the township attorney with that answer, so you can disagree with the township attorney, Mr. Mayor.
Stop the clock, because we're taking his time. I think this is substantial use. He is allowed to, it is his job to consult us, to advise us, but I do not have to take his advice. I disagree. This is substantive change. It is going from farmland to a park. So I think that is a substantive change, my opinion. Go on, sir, Mr. Jones.
And then the other question, because I haven't followed this as closely as the rest of the community, but was there ever a violation where, I guess there's usually quorum rules where, council can't have more than 4 or 5 people together? Because I hear a lot about transparency. Were there ever any meetings with more than whatever the quorum is required or met below the quorum threshold regarding this topic? In other words, what were the violations at the end of the day is what I'm trying to get at. I know a lot of people have raised it. If someone just came here for the first time, it's not clear.
Me? Go ahead. You.
No.
you have a point? I'd love to hear.
The answer is, I don't know what the answer to your question is, because I don't know what your question is.
I guess my
your
question is,
your question assumes that there were some violations of law.
Well, I see signs that say recall Prasad, so I'm just, someone just walking here for the first time would say, gosh, what did he do? And I never heard anybody say what he did.
I think you need to ask the people who I didn't draft the signs. So the answer is that I'm not really sure. All I can ever do is, if you ask me, Mr. Renone, was this process correct or not correct? That I can answer, but I don't. When you ask the question, so tell me, what violations of the law have there been? The answer is I don't know. I read a sign that says transparency in government, but I'm not sure. Now, by the way, transparency in government is, the answer is, have we followed the Open Public Meetings Act in every one of our meetings? We absolutely have. So if that's the question, I don't think that if it's a violation of the Open Public Meetings Act you're asking me about,
that's probably my question.
We work with the clerk and the mayor and the township manager as agendas get prepared and as we have council meetings, and I'm not aware of there being any violations of the Open Public Meetings Act.
And then I would probably say sometimes it's not, in this particular case, if there was a violation, let's say, of transparency, obviously there was a Freedom of Information Act that was called, at least from what I read in the paper. So apparently Mr. Prasad did use township email, and so the public was able to see his communication. Oftentimes we hear public officials are using private email, at least in these communications, to use the township's email that's been released. Is that correct?
So once again, there were township emails and private emails released. Townships. So once again, if you ask me now the next question is the Open Public Records Act. The answer is, I believe that everything that was requested was reproduced under the Open Public Records Act, OPRA. So the answer is that there hasn't been a violation of OPRA because there was a request and the documents were provided. So I don't, if your question is, you just said there's a violation of the Freedom of Information, the answer is that's not true, because there was an OPRA request and it was responded to timely. So that happened. That's why Mr. Baumann had all of the emails, because they were produced by the township.
Okay, so this is really the system working then, that the public is aware of his communications.
Exactly timely
he's following
but
the
we'll
rules.
let that slide.
So the reason for my question is, I know several members of the Open Space Committee had, raised concerns that, this statute might potentially cause a Charlottesville, Virginia, where there was the Unite the Right event. I'll say 2 or 3. And I had
I'm
mentioned.
going to allow you 30 seconds.
Thank you for allowing those soccer rules when your time goes over. I like that. But I'll just say this, that in that particular situation, I would say I'm frightened about the similarities, because it was a councilman in Charlottesville that, where the Robert E. Lee statue was, had encouraged the council to name the park Emancipation Park. And that was one of the main causes of the disturbance, and they got the councilman's tweets, and they started to have a recall vote on that councilman. What I fear is not what happens to Mr. Prasad, I'll finish, but what happens to others that want to support and have people who are fighting for human rights and civil rights. Thank you.
Time. Mr. Desai, you're one of my favorite people, but no, sir, you already spoke. You can only speak once. No, sir, you can only speak once. You don't know the regret in my heart to tell you you can't speak, but you cannot. No, you cannot speak. You can only speak once. Otherwise, I'll get the whole room. Mr. Desai only can speak once. I'm sorry. I'm very. Mr. Desai, please. Mr. Desai, please. You can only speak once, or otherwise I'll have a room full of people coming up again.
You have someone behind you. Come on up, sir.
I'm sorry, Mr. Desai. It hurts me to have to do that.
My name is Brian Ulrich, 209 Wilson Road. I wasn't going to get up and talk because I'd rather be in a burning house fire than getting up here and speaking. But I specifically wanted to get up to thank Ted Chase for standing up for me last week. And coming to my defense and somewhat. And Mr. Mayor, you know, I love you both. I appreciate you both for saying that. My wife didn't want to be here because my wife and I were the ones he wanted to call the FBI on the last time. And, you know, I'd be wanting to look at his emails after this going on. But I wanted to thank you both for standing up and saying something. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Mr. Ulrich, Mr. Chase went farther than I did, and I regret that I did not go as far. I apologize to you, and I apologize for not apologizing 3 years ago.
I appreciate it. My wife didn't want
Mr. Wright.
Seeing no one else come forward, I make a motion that we close public session.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Seeing
Okay,
no
they're going to go into
discussion on
council
this.
comments now. We're going to stick around and see what they have to say,
One
if anything.
potato, 2 potato, 3 potato. All in favor of closing public discussion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Public discussion is closed. Thank you for the most part. That was conducted very respectfully. I appreciate that in these sensitive times. Council committee reports and comments. I started here last time. I shall start with Mr. Wright.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The race card has to stop. It has to stop now, no question. That said, I know racism firsthand. When I was 6 years old, my mother started a brownie troop, part of the Girl Scouts. We were at a function in town when we were alerted to a problem at our house. They said our house was on fire. Nope, house wasn't on fire. It was a really big cross. I'm here to tell you, it was a really big cross. Now, at that time, to a kid, I was like, what the devil's going on here? I didn't know about racism, but I learned it that night. Now, my father was president of the NAACP. That's how that cross got there. Because he was looking to better the population in that town. Did you hear what I just said? President of the NAACP, and because of that, I had this really big cross burned in our front yard. Now, if you stopped in front of my house, my father had someone in the front and the back. So if you stopped at our house and you were not B-L-A-C-K, black, they took a shot at you. If you were not black, they took a shot at you. That's just fact. Front and back of my house. Took a shot at you. I didn't know if that was right or wrong, but hell, took a shot at you. Now, my father moved us because he had 4 young kids and a wife. Couldn't do it down there in that town. Couldn't do it at all. So what did he do? He moved us. It's called safety. He moved us out of the neighborhood because he didn't want us to experience what was going on. Now, here's the catch. When I was growing up in school, I didn't know, like I said, race because I played marbles with the white kids. I played marbles. We dug holes out there at the school and played marbles. Go figure. So when you talk about race, I know front end. I saw it. So let's not go to the racist let's not throw race around. Now, yeah, I think we need to rethink the whole project. Where to place them, the process, the transparency of the process. okay, let's rethink this. Let's go through the process. Let's make sure everybody knows what's going on in town. No doubt about it. Now for other business. Redevelopment Agency. We met this past week to pay the bills of the agency. We planned our next meeting, and we will have in here developers present their ideas for our next project. That was it this week. Oh, and by the way, I worked at the food bank this past Saturday, and I realized one thing. That's hard work. When I went in, I didn't understand it. So on Saturday, when I walked through the door, she handed me a little butter knife. You know, I didn't understand what was going on. Well, I became a box boy for the day. Now this is how this worked. I gave her my ugly look and she gave me her ugly look. And I just said, I was a box boy for the rest of the day. Understandable, it was a beautiful experience. Now to the gentleman up front with the black and the white stripes. I work for a living too. I'm a funeral director. I don't plan on, and I can't plan on, when people come to the door and say, hey, Mr. Wright, we want to plan a funeral for our loved one. Gotta stay. I can't tell them I got a meeting. I can't tell them it's a council meeting or committee meeting. Nothing. I gotta stay. I missed a lot of things in life. I was a coach for Pop Warner football way back in the day. Flag. Some days I made it, some days I didn't. And that was only 3 days a week. So I understand. Now you can go home, sit in the confines of your house, watch us on TV. And you know something? You're gonna miss one important thing. Because when we go through the ordinance, the mayor opens up the meeting to anybody that wants to speak on that ordinance. You have a right, you're a citizen here in Franklin Township, to walk up to that microphone and say, hey, I don't like that, or hey, let's rethink that, or hey, you're doing a damn good job. Sitting home don't work. You gotta be here for that. Otherwise, you can throw darts at the TV set. Nobody cares. Now, check the record, everyone. Check the record. Our municipal clerk is right there. Mr. Bowman did the Oprah, so y'all can Oprah this too. Whenever we have a large group, I see people out here, I always say, stay. Stay. See your government work. Stay. Don't leave when your issue is done. Stay. Because if you don't stay, you miss what's going on. So before y'all leave, y'all think about staying, you'll see your government in action. Please, stay. You understand? Stay. Mr. Mayor, I think I'm done.
Thank you. Mr. Chase.
In a minute, I'm going to report for the Public Works Committee, which met from 5:30 to 7 this evening, so I haven't had any supper yet. But I want to explain a bit, particularly to Mr. Guy, who said we don't work together, how we do work together. We have committees of 4 members of council who meet with the manager and typically other staff, for instance, in this case, the Director of Public Works. And it's largely the manager and staff bringing forward things that they think the township should do and get an opinion from those council members before they go ahead, and eventually this will result in some cases an ordinance, in some cases a resolution, in some cases just particular ways that we spend money that was already approved in the budget. For instance, which streets to be repaved, and that's the way we work. And I think a lot of the problem that you're all here about tonight, and particularly I was heartened to hear that from most of you it was a criticism of the way things were done rather than the concept of the Peace and Freedom Park. But unfortunately, this was not the way it worked in this case. Councilman Prasad worked on this for a long time, and things got very far ahead, and it never did go to, I think in this case, it should have been the Land Use Committee. And really, anytime any of us have an idea, and some of the things I'll report on were my ideas that I took to the Public Works Committee. And that's the way things should be done. That's the way things are normally done. So, we had an update on the streets that were being repaved. A number of streets have already been paved. What we call the Buffer Drive area, which is actually quite a variety of streets, work should begin on or about October 8th. A few others is called the Apgar Drive area, although it includes Miller Farm Road, which is nowhere near that. Work to begin on or about September 24th, in other words, yesterday. And then others will be worked on next year in the spring. The Rolling Hills Drive area, the Gifford Road area, the Hillcrest Avenue area, some that we call the Irvington Avenue area. Unfortunately, there was a fatal flaw in the lowest bid, and by the time we were advised of this, it was too late to assign it to another bidder, so that will be rebid in the spring. The Little Rocky Hill water main, unfortunately, is not proceeding as planned. This involves having an above-ground bypass while they work on, to carry water to residents while they work on the relining of the main. They have to pass tests to show that there are no bacteria in the line, and they haven't yet passed these tests, so they have not yet been able to start the real work. So the real work will not be completed before winter. I was very sad to hear this. What we call the SCADA, SCADA system is moving, which is basically a way that our water tanks can report any problem directly to Public Works. The tanks essentially can send an email. And this is going forward, should be working by late 2019. We're going to have a new water main on 9th Street, basically running from Cedar Grove Lane to Delwood, essentially to a loop to ensure, give us a way of, if something should happen to the Eastern Avenue main, we still have a way to move water to people in that general area. I'll go forward. A couple of things that I put forward really coming out of the Sustainable Jersey suggestions to improve towns. One is a complete streets ordinance to make more provision for bicycle lanes and sidewalks so that pedestrians and bicyclists and even the handicapped can make greater use of our streets. And this was in the main approved, and we'll work towards having an ordinance on this. And similarly, Sustainable Jersey has suggested that a new stormwater maintenance ordinance. I submitted this to the Director of Public Works, and he says 80 to 90% of what's in that we already have. He'll work on adding things and some other things that he has in mind, and this will eventually come before council as an ordinance. And a final thing that we discussed is parking in snow emergencies when we really need to plow the streets. There are a few streets, Brookline Avenue, Home Street, Ambrose Street, that are very narrow and have residents who don't have the space to park on their property and have to park on the street. Everywhere else in the town, we want to make provision for plowing to take place and for it to be possible for the plows to plow the street completely and not plow any parked cars in. So we're going to come forward with an ordinance, but with an exemption for Brookline and Home and Ambrose and a couple of other little cross streets there. And in fact, before we do this, we'll check to see if there's any other streets in town that we need to exempt for this reason. So, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think I'll stop there. A couple of other technical things that will come forward in good time. But that's the way things are supposed to work. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, before you go forward, I forgot to mention, Mr. Bornlacher, how are my sidewalks coming?
The project is moving along according to plan, so the work with public service is getting done to facilitate the sidewalk, the movement of utility poles so that the sidewalks can go in. So they're moving along according to plan.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chase and Mr. Wright. Mr. Purcell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Firstly,
sorry, my back hurts these days.
Mr. Gleason.
I'm sorry, glasses. My
Please.
back. It's my back.
Be quiet, please.
Statement is, I support the new direction of a Citizens Memorial Committee, and I'm looking forward to their recommendations. Now, as far as the process is concerned, there was a land use meeting, and if you go back and look at the recommendations in the minutes of September 28th, 2017, you will see that there was a recommendation made to put the memorial there, and that's where it stands. Dr. Chase, who is the liaison to open space, should have been able to convey that to them. But, you know, I leave it up to him, but he knew as early as the 28th of September last year that this recommendation had been made, and we followed that recommendation. Now for my committee reports, the Human Relations Commission met last night, and they had the Hamilton Street police officers there giving a report on what's going on in Hamilton Street, especially with the new housing that's coming up and the need for increased patrols. And so there was a full discussion on that aspect of it. And land use meets later this week, and admin hasn't met, and we're going to have a special meeting of the Community Foundation on the 1st or 2nd of October. That's all, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Prasad and Mr. Vasanella.
Thank you, Mayor. So just want to give a quick update on some Hamilton Street issues, which did not get to last meeting, and I'll get to other comments after that. Hamilton Street's Trunk or Treat and Township Recreation Pumpkin Patch events will merge into one event on Hamilton Street this year. Usually there's two events. They found it more practical and I think a better way to roll it into one big event on Hamilton Street. That's going to happen October 27th, and it should be fantastic. We'll be locating areas on Hamilton Street where new poles can be directed so that the holiday decorations can be put up this year. Last year, PSE&G took them down and they wouldn't place them back up on the poles, so they're going to try to find an alternative because the Hamilton board had invested in some decorations to make it more festive on the Hamilton corridor. Franklin Police will be holding Coffee with a Cop on Hamilton Street on October 3rd. Great event. The places are actually going to do it. I think will be announced and put on the website, if I'm correct, Mr. Warlocker. Of the 5 new projects on Hamilton, 2 were done. 1 will be done the next month or so, and the other 2 are progressing well and should be done in spring of 2019. And anybody who's been down there, you know they're pretty considerable projects for Hamilton Street, and welcome. Suggest anybody who hasn't take a look at them when they get a chance. It's changing the landscape of Hamilton. The Hamilton Street sidewalk project will be done in October. So that's the Hamilton Street. So addressing the memorial issue. I thought I said it last week, perhaps I didn't communicate it, I thought I did. I'll say it again. The comments that were made about the opponents of the memorial statues were wrong, they were inexcusable. It wasn't just Republicans that were against it. I don't know, against is even the right word, just did not think memorials were what we needed. There were also Democrats, some I know very well, that expressed their concerns about the project. And people that, I don't know if they had any political affiliation, and if they do, I don't know what they are. The point is that there were people of all or no political affiliations that were not interested in the project. And I didn't hear one syllable or one gesture that suggested to me that that any reason they were against it had to do with the fact that they were colored statues or anything about racism or bigotry. And I said those comments were inexcusable last week, or last meeting, and I'll say it again, so I'm being clear on that. As far as the process, you know, what started out as a reasonable idea to promote a reasonable feeling of peace and nonviolence years ago, and then kind of got shelved for many years, obviously came back out. Probably over a year ago as it went through the Land Use Committee. I won't go through the whole process of that, but it is Councilman Wright, Councilman Prasad, Councilman Chase, and myself and that Land Use Committee, and it was discussed many times. And on one occasion, it was put forward as a recommendation that that spot be considered. Those minutes were marked confidential, but I don't want to get into all that minutia. The point is, there was a process, and a lot of the processes were followed properly. I think the problem is, and I've told Councilman Prasad this several times, I can't tell what's in his heart, but the bottom line is the process continued unnecessarily aggressive and unnecessarily quick. And there was misleading and incomplete information given to various council members. I don't want to speak for them, but that had us not quite understanding exactly what was going on. That being said, again, I can't speak to what was in Councilman Prasad's heart. I think the idea originally was coming from a good place. But after last meeting, 2 weeks ago, well, less than 2 weeks ago, because it was a Thursday, I know I was disgusted by everything that transpired up to that point. And I reached out to a senior council member here that I have a lot of faith in their judgment, and asked and suggested that I don't see how anything can go forward in the way of a memorial park or a peace memorial unless this was thrown back into the citizens' hands 100% without any council involvement, any council members involved in the committee. And at the end of the day, or at the end of the review process by a citizens committee, we'll see. We'll just see without any judgments or expectations. First thing we agreed on was to reach out to a couple of significant community leaders, only 2, just because we didn't know what to do, what to think, where to go from there. And if we couldn't get the buy-in, or at least they thought it was a bad idea, we'd have to reconsider it. We all agreed, actually, in unison. The first person to call after that would be the mayor, and I'll let him speak for it. But that's exactly what happened. Now, as far as what happens with the citizens group, I don't know. I conferred with the mayor, and we went back and forth, and he came up with some good ideas, including having Mr. LaCourte serve on the committee, which I, after talking with him, thought that would be an excellent idea. As far as the makeup of the committee, I don't know. Obviously, it has to be one that is acceptable and one that's looking for solutions, not for continuing any division. As far as Councilman Prasad's concerned, when you sit up here for years and years serving with anybody, you have to look at the situation. Obviously, a lot of people were hurt, and I'd be pretty angry if I were them. But as far as a decision to resign or whether to run again or whatever somebody does, I honestly believe that's up to the individual and the voters and the public. So that's what I have to say about that, and I look forward to seeing what may come of a Citizens Committee or may not. And I guess we'll hear more about that when the mayor speaks. So that's pretty much it. Sorry to take so long, but I wanted to say all that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Casanella. Councilwoman Franz, Prior Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to say that I've been doing this for 15 years. And I've sat here tonight and I've been sad, but I've also been happy and been encouraged. Now, start on a positive note first. I was very encouraged about everybody coming out here and showing the love of Franklin Township, showing your passion for Franklin Township, showing your caring for Franklin Township. That's very encouraging because it shows that people love this town, they respect the diversity of this town, and the decency and order of this town. That makes me happy, and makes me happy to have been able to serve you for the 15 years that I have. But what's also made me sad is that we've heard you, we've listened to you, we've heard about the issue of transparency and governance. We've heard about the lack of following protocol and due process. We heard what you said. And because of that, we have lost your trust. That makes me sad. And after 15 years, it makes me sad to hear that kind of, to receive that kind of input. But I think that you have to know that this governing body cares about what happens in this town, and we want to correct whatever wrongs that we've created. And the idea of a citizens committee where we will remove ourselves from the process and allow the citizens to adhere to provide us with recommendations and input is, I think, it definitely is the way to go. And I believe that that'll take us in a new direction. We can slam on the brakes now, not pump the brakes, but slam on the brakes. Stop, regroup, redirect, and receive your input, and hopefully we will put this thing back on track. So I just want to thank you all for being here tonight, and hopefully there will be some good that comes out of this, and whatever division that has been created in our community, like what we saw on Franklin Day Festival, we'll get back to where we used to be. So thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and thank you all for coming here tonight.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilman Onichaka.
Okay, Mayor. To me, it's very, very unfortunate that this issue has dragged this township, our great township, to an unpleasant situation. It's very, very unfortunate. I mean, I don't think it's a happy situation for me. I've served this township for more than 8 years, about 8 years now as a councilman. I've never seen anything like this. I know with the committee that is coming up, the committee will help us to restore our confidence. I know most of them feel that they've lost confidence in this great council. I know it's going to restore the confidence. No doubt about that. And I trust our mayor. I know the appointment is very, very fair. That is my greatest concern. I want us to have back our confidence. We've been doing a great job. I think this will give us a permanent solution to this problem. That is what I have to say on this issue. The second issue is that I've received complaints about Amway Road, most especially towards my ward. And I've been fighting, not that I'm fighting, I've been making calls, trying to find a possible solution, how we're going to fix the poor condition of that road. And unfortunately for me, I got the solution. They told me that the road, they will start working on that, on the Amway Road, at the beginning of next year. I think that will get that problem solved. That is what I have to say, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Military.
You're getting there close, Mr. Mayor. You're getting there.
Thank
We're
you.
working.
Thank you.
All right. I guess I'll start with the tougher issue. So, Mr. Troutman, I'd like you to understand that you're right. I should have responded at the last meeting. The reason I didn't is because sometimes when I'm first, my thoughts aren't always processed. And also, just like other people have said, we do work for a full day. That's not an excuse why I didn't answer and stand up, but that is why I couldn't come up or answer right away. But I do want to speak up now. The process certainly was wrong. As a new member of council, I am still learning some of the things. That does not excuse allowing the process to be wrong, but I am still trying to learn as I go. And many of my fellow members of council and Mr. Gornlocker will attest that I try to ask as many questions as possible to make sure the process does go properly. And he laughs because he'll get a lot of questions from me in a day. But it's not an excuse to allow the process for the past 9 months to go as it has as it have been in, but I am trying to learn as I go along. As far as racism, it should have never been introduced. I have lived in this town, like many of you, my entire life. This is a very diverse town. I've lived in very diverse communities when I went to school. If you look at the neighborhood I spent 4 years in, it was a very diverse neighborhood also. So to try to even inject that into this discussion should have never happened. What I would say is I would hope that we could do a reset on this. Again, doing the process right, doing the process correctly if possible, and maybe this project never comes to fruition, depending on how a committee, if there's a committee, actually proceeds with this. But I would leave that to the residents to decide at this point, and I would urge that we as council can stay out of this, because I think the residents should decide if they want this. As for open space, the only reason that I thought of Consolata as it was presented was not to use the open space. Growing up in town as an altar server, I got to meet a lot of the Consolata fathers throughout my years, and that was a perfect mission for them. They were out preaching peace and religion and nonviolence to different communities. So I thought that was a way, my personal opinion was to memorialize that in that way. Again, meeting many of the missionaries throughout my years. But again, that's my personal opinion, and I have to respect the opinion of the whole. So obviously this is not the location that the residents would like it, but let's see what an independent board does, and where they would advise it. So again, please give this a chance still. It does sound like overwhelmingly. I do not agree with the tactics or the way that this was approached, and let's try to do this the right way if we can. And I hope that we can restore your faith in us. Moving on, I would like to say though, as was pointed out, we had a wonderful event where the town came together this past Saturday. And actually, before I even get into that, before that, we had a chance to gather as a town at the new gazebo that was completed. So that was a wonderful. Thank you to everybody who came out for that. Thank you to those that worked hard on that project and did it the right way, I would say. And we appreciate having a community gathering now. That then led to this past weekend where, thank you to, I'm not going to try to name everybody, so I'm just going to put a blanket statement out to the employees, to the volunteers, to those that organized. I know former Councilwoman Roz Sherman did a lot and worked with a huge committee I'm assuming a large committee, or maybe a small committee, but to bring us together, and it was a good opportunity for everybody to come together. I hope everybody at least could enjoy that and had an enjoyable time there. It was fun talking with as many residents as I could and getting to meet different vendors throughout the town. And Councilman Chase already reported on DPW, so I will not rehash anything there. Good luck to all of our students who just started. I know the private school started a couple weeks ago, but the public school started last weekend. Good luck in the school year, and I hope you do well, and I hope you get the opportunity to learn a lot of history around here. The only other committee, I don't know if I reported last time that I report that Rodney Avenue is significant. All right, so I will not rehash that. We're just happy to have that construction project pretty much done and moving forward. Please be patient this week. I know New Brunswick Road is being repaved during the day. Yes, between Elizabeth Ave to Crown.
Correct.
Okay. And this evening, barring the weather, I'm not sure if the
Probably
county,
not out.
Okay. Please be patient. The county's trying to work on the on Cedar Grove Lane. It desperately needs some repaving, so please be patient. It's a minor inconvenience for the week that they're trying to do the work, but we're trying to make sure that the main parts of this town, the infrastructure stays in order. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Deputy Mayor Robinson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I'm going to read a statement and then I'll give my comments. The Township of Franklin shall, through the democratic process, evaluate the needs of public and shall provide quality, cost-effective services to the community. That's our mission statement. The vision. Residents of the Township of Franklin will live and thrive in a community that values community pride and spirit, celebrates diversity, and creates an environment that provides opportunities for all people so that they develop as healthy, caring, positive, educated, and responsible members of the community. We failed to live up to that mission and vision statement of Franklin Township. And I have to remember my reason why I ran. Some of the things that, as residents, we sit out in public and we have a different lens view of those who sit as elected officials. And I remember my reason why was some of the shenanigans that I saw through my lens view at the time. And I will not and shall not forget that I am to be here to uphold the oath that I stood before my colleagues and the people that were in this room to do what it is that I'm supposed to do and be responsible for my actions, to make sure that we are each other's keeper and hold each other responsible and accountable, as well as the citizens and the community at large. So I thank you for being here tonight and throughout the other evenings, because we don't have all the answers, whether we have book smarts, whether we're new on council, whether we're senior on council. But collectively as a community, we need to work together to make sure that we move Franklin forward. We may not always agree, but we can agree to disagree, be respectful and mindful of each other's thoughts, opinions, and lens view. However, when it comes steeped in racism, when it comes steeped in backbiting, this is not what Franklin is about. And this is not what this council is about. The actions of one is not the actions by all. Yes, it was brought out in the Franklin Reporter and Advocate, those things by Oprah request. But because of his engagement and involvement with the political process and being at meetings, which you all have a right to be here and to do the same, stay in contact with your leaders, not just in controversial times. And at this moment, I'm going to give out my public-facing number, which is 732-419-8530. I'm asking you, when there's something on the agenda, if you can't make the meeting, Give us your feedback. Send us an email what your concerns are if you can't make the meeting. It's our responsibility to make sure that we're taking into consideration all that have a voice in how we move forward. We also have an attorney here to make sure that we are doing things in the way in which we should do them, that the liabilities aren't there. Did this project start off exactly where it needed to be? Absolutely. Did the train lose control? One would say yes. But we listen to what was said. We reflect on what was being done and what was not being done, and we're starting anew. I agree that the process needs to be those of us who are to be removed here on council from the process. That's step one. Step two, yes, Mr. Prasad, you need to take responsibility and ownership for your actions and apologize to the people in which are on the receiving end of your hurt and hurtful words and deeds, including your colleagues. I don't know what's in your mind and heart. I don't know what's in the mind and hearts of any of us. And if I don't win another election, guess what? It's no skin off my back. I still be able to sleep at night, and I can still serve this community, whether I'm an elected official or not. I've done it the 17 years prior to me being on council, and I will continue, whether I'm here or not on this dais, because that's who I am. And I ask that you just allow us the opportunity to work together collaboratively as a community, as I have read the mission and vision statement of Franklin Township. As many of you have come up so eloquently said what it is that you feel about our town, what it is that you feel about us as leaders. Let's work together and not against one another. This whole concept is really nothing, where it got out of control had nothing to do with the concept, but it started being divisive between parties and people or persons. Has to stop. It has to stop. So the question is for everyone in this room and anyone listening under the sound of my voice, where do we go from here? And I would like to also say that due process, everybody talked about protocol and process. When people do things wrong, due process should take place as well. There comes a day when you have to face the music, individually or collectively. And Mr. Schaefer, you said it best at the last meeting. Light drives out darkness. Love drives out hate. And I'm paraphrasing because that's from Dr. Martin Luther King. And we definitely should take heed. On a lighter and better note, more of who to speak to who we are as a town. I was here briefly for the gazebo unveiling. I was actually taking a conference call for my job, but I listened to and saw most of the activities unfold. And a special thank you to the Gazebo Fund founding members, Mr. John Felix, Chair, Mr. Bill Grippo, Fundraising Chair, Michael Steinbrook, Special Projects, Zachary Lichtman, and apologize if I'm mispronouncing anyone's name, Steering Committee, John Hurling, East Millstone Historical Society, Peter Stavronidis, Corporate Fundraiser, and the FTCAC members, Tanya Haslin and Safi Cologne. It was a beautiful occasion, and kudos to a job well done. Also, Franklin Day Festival. My granddaughter enjoyed the festivities so much she didn't want to leave. I don't know if 5 hours is long enough, but we certainly came together as Franklin does, and Franklin always does. So kudos to Ross Sherman, Alice Lasipowicz, and Safi Cologne, and anyone else that had involvement in bringing that all together. And then also, I'd like to raise awareness that we have Franklin's own Makai Lewis, who is USA Wrestling Junior World Team's gold winner. And he represents Franklin Township. Mackay is a sophomore at Virginia Tech, and he is bringing home the gold for the United States of America and represents Franklin Township very well. So thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So first, the pleasantries. Thank you, Councilwoman Sherman. For those of you who don't know it, she is Franklin Day. She invented it, she organized it, she made it happen. It was incredible. I got there at 1 o'clock and the place was already jammed. There were 22,247 people and 821 dogs. I counted everyone. No. There were at least 22,000 people there. It was truly amazing, and this is what Franklin is about. And Mr. LaCourte, you're an eye shot as I look at her. You organized the cars, the antique or cool car show, and many other people helped. It was really a wonderful day. Very quick Financial Oversight Committee report. Am I able to report on the outside jobs situation?
I would not report on that yet.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, you have an ordinance amendment to introduce for that.
Okay, thank you. That didn't happen. That will be introduced in public using proper procedure. So now more to the subject. So Mr. Jones, are you here? I don't see you anymore. It is now 9:30 and it's excusable that he left. But he was kind of asking, and he and I are friends, so don't take this the wrong way about what I'm saying, but he was asking kind of lawyerly questions, no offense, that were, well, was this done, was that done, was this, well, so no, as best I know, it was no out of sunshine meeting, and as best I know, and I could be wrong, because maybe there was an out of sunshine meeting and I just wasn't there, as best I know, the Open Public Meetings Act, or Records Act was followed, although there were, as the record will show, emails sent from Mr. Prasad's private email, which is, you should not be using private email for township purposes. But that, just because those rules are followed does not mean this was an open process. Things appeared at this, in this chambers that I had never heard of, sudden changes, things added, and I don't mean to pile on to Mr. Prasad at this meeting. I said my piece about him last time. I said that his words were reprehensible and his actions were reprehensible, and I think I made a pretty strong statement. But this was not an open process, and we are going to move towards an open process. Please read my comment in the Franklin Reporter that I said in response to the op-ed. Up here we serve everyone, and we don't have the luxury of jumping on a single issue. We have to serve those of you who want this memorial, and we have to serve those of you who don't want the memorial. And I salute Mr. Alex Garazi for taking a step back. He was involved before, and he's taken a step back and asked Mr. Prasad to take a step out. And Mr. LaCourte, who has opposed this, who has pledged to be open about proceeding forward. My goal tonight was to bring us back from the brink. And brink might be an overstatement, but I think you know what I mean. And I think we did that. We are now in a more conversational mode about this, And while there's a few outliers who are saying build it now and a few outliers are saying never build it, I think most of us are settled on, all right, let's have a process and not kill it because it was done wrong initially. Basically, if it has value, then it will rise. If it does not have value, it will sink. And I'm going to come back to the township manager's report at the end. I'm going to skip straight to council discussion, the council discussion item, taking my prerogative as chair. This is not going to be an in-depth discussion of what the what that committee, the Citizens Committee, will look like. Council members came to me, citizens came to me and said, why don't we do this? It was not my original idea, but why don't we do this? And I, as Mr. Wright likes to point out, am a wonk. So an idea becomes 2 pages in shorthand. I am not going to go through all 2 pages because some of these are silly ideas. There's internal conflict within it. Things don't agree. But I thought it would be worthwhile to read what I wrote as a mission statement. And these are just my ideas. So this may change. Council members are hearing about this for the first time because this is a discussion. I'm not asking for people to vote on this by any means. Some of them are hearing it as you are hearing it, and then it will come back again and perhaps again. And it's going to come back slowly in proper order. But the mission statement, after a fair and open deliberation, to make a recommendation to the Council of the Township of Franklin, County of Somerset, if there should be a peace and nonviolence memorial, the nature of such a memorial, the location, and other related items as they see fit. And the goal is, it is not a reasonable expectation that all members agree on the recommendation, but it is expected that they all agree the team functioned fairly and openly in choosing what the team thought was the best option to serve the Township of Franklin. I will say one of the things I've come up with, because others have spoken to it, no council member will be on this. No council member will be on this team. It will be a citizens team. Meetings will be open. If there are emails, those will be open to the public. Minutes will be open. There'll be video. It'll be videoed so people can watch it ad nauseum. So this is going to be, as I think, as I said in the in my op-ed, in glaring sunshine, because that's the only way to move forward. So that is my comments on the council discussion item. Are there any other comments on the council discussion item? Peace and Nonviolence Memorial Citizens Group. Okay, so I see none. Going back to my council comments, I put a little note to myself on council comments, FTTV sound. So I normally don't watch FTTV. You know, I was here, so I don't watch it, but I thought that meeting was worth reviewing, so I watched it on the internet, and the sound was poor. So I was going to bring that up, but a brief chat with our IT specialist, he said he has fixed it, and I guess I'll see when I view this meeting. That's it for my comments. I guess that's it for the Peace and Nonviolence Memorial discussion for tonight. Township Manager's report.
Okay, Franklin, we're going to sign off. That's about all that's going to be said tonight about the Monument Park and the issue of regime facade.
With Brad
Been a long night. Thanks for sticking with us. And as always, till we see you next time, stay safe.